Keisha, is this ready?
Ready? I call this meeting to order. Please stand and join me for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you and good morning. It's May 2nd, 2023. Welcome to this meeting of the Sherburne County Board of Commissioners. With that, I am open to a motion to approve our regular meeting proposed agenda.
So move.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Gray. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Felber seconds. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion has carried. That moves us right into agenda item number 2, that of our public hearing for the tax abatement for Beaudry Oil and Services. Good morning, Mr. Dan Weber.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. We have received an application for abatement from Beaudry Oil and Services. So if time allows, I'd like to give a little background on both the company and the abatement before the public hearing.
That'd be great. Thank you.
There we go. So the company has been in the area since 1981. They do have locations throughout Minnesota, but their main headquarters are located in Elk River. And with a name like Beaudry Oil, you can imagine what their wheelhouse is they provide lubricant to the automotive and trucking industries. The properties in question, they do own 2 properties in Elk River. The northern portion is an outlot that could be used for future expansion. This particular project today is being discussed on the southern lot. And you can see from the aerial that it does have a lot of lowland on the property, which is some of the background for the request of the abatement. The actual project would be a 25,000 square foot lube shop and warehouse, and much of that property is considered low. You can see it's about $650,000 in extra costs that will need to be make that lot buildable, and it also needs an 8-inch water line from adjoining properties, which is another $160,000 in costs. So you're looking at $800,000 of that $4.3 million is atypical of a normal project. It would create 14 jobs at $28.50 an hour. There is mandatory overtime for several of the employees, which would drive that cost up to about the actual wage up to about $70,000 per employee. So if we look at the current property now, it's valued at $244,000. They do pay about $5,700 in taxes, which the county gets about a fourth of that. This project would add $1.4 million in project costs and taxable value, and the total annual property increase of the project would be about $43,500, of which the county would receive about $11,000. The request on the abatement application was for 10 years, which would equate to about $110,500. So with every abatement, we do score it with our tax abatement policy. This scored a 27, where if you go to the scoring matrix, a 27 would be a moderate or 50% of the request. So if the total taxes are $110,000 over the life of the abatement request, they would be eligible for half of that due to the, based on the scoring system. So it would be about $5,520 per year over the next 10 years. The EDA did recommend approval as presented, and the City of Elk River is also reviewing an 11-year abatement request at $138,000. And with that, I'll stand for questions before the actual public hearing.
Okay, questions from the board? Okay, seeing no questions from the board, we will open the public hearing. It was scheduled for today, anytime after 9 o'clock. So we are good with our time. So is there anyone that wishes to speak to this tax abatement request with Beaudry Oil? Please state your name for the record.
Good morning, Brett Collier, Big Lake. I saw this coming up on the agenda, so I tried to do a little research on it and actually obtained a copy of your tax abatement policy program manual. First, just a couple general comments. As you know, I have difficulty with tax abatements being issued. I feel that tax abatements should only be applicable to, say, if you lose your property from fire or storm damage, that you should not have to pay taxes until you build your property back up. But apparently that's not how we're wishing to use it here. This company, to go ahead, so this is a company that's going to do lube and oil for automotive and trucking. Giving these folks a tax abatement, what about the other people that are already performing these functions in our county and about the county? So now we're going to have to be paying, they're going to have to be paying for this new company to be built and start providing these services. So I didn't quite see that, how that was factored into the formulas here. We got everything from your Jiffy Lube and your Walmart to right now, these, one of the things that they say they're going to be doing too are lube and oil for large trucks and farm equipment. Well, that's currently being done now by someone. So we're going to be taking their business away if we build this, and we're going to be subsidizing the taking of their business away. If they want to build this property and give another option, that's fine and wonderful. But again, we're subsidizing it. We're not having them pay taxes to the county. And they did point out in here too, there are going to have to be some adjustments to the property. You have to put water lines in. It's going to add more wear and tear to the road that goes up Highway 1 there to it if we're going to start having more heavy equipment coming in there for service. That's generically. I've made a number of small other comments looking at their application. But I guess I can save that for a little bit. But those are my thoughts. I think you ought to reconsider whether we ought to be abating and refunding any of their taxpayer money on this. Thank you.
Brett. Other comments? Anyone here to speak during this public hearing for Beaudry Oil and Services tax abatement request? Commissioners, any other comments? Staff? Dan?
Well, the next step would be to discuss the resolution, but prior to that, we would need to close the public hearing.
So I'll close the public hearing, and then you do have the resolution in your packet. So I would want to know the wish of the board for considering the resolution number 050223-AD-3084, approving the request for the abatement of the county property taxes relating to this building project.
Madam Chair, I would move that we approve.
Motion is made by Commissioner Felber to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Halls. Any other questions or comments?
I just wanted to state that this did go through the county EDA as well with recommendation for approval. This is an increase that this company is making an investment that we are just foregoing 10 years of the increased value of taxes that would be paid on that build, and we would still be retaining the same amount of taxes that are currently existing on the property, and after 10 years that will then increase, and at the same time the school district gets that increase that is already that will be done. So that is a positive as well for the school.
Any others? See?
Well, just a clarifying comment. I think, just to clarify, they're only getting 50% of the abatement, so they're actually paying incremental taxes on the improvements to the property. Plus, that's over a 10-year period. Then beyond that, they're paying the full amount. This is a company that has been in Elk River for a very long time. They're a very good resident, and so I'm in support of it.
Others seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion has carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. We are now on to agenda item number 3, that of our open forum. Ms. Keisha Broderick. Broderick, thank you.
We have 3 people signed up, Madam Chair. Our first person is Barbara Rodquist of Zimmerman, speaking on jail and ICE.
Okay. Yes, thanks, Barbara. If you can come to the mic, introduce yourself for the record.
Good morning, honorable commissioners. I'm Barbara Rudquist. I've been a resident of Sherburne County for 34 years in Zimmerman. You all received an email from me. I wrote to you about this issue previously, so I'll be brief. Members of our religious and faith community have been very clear about expressing their views on the morality of holding immigrants in our jail, and I agree with them. As a member of the secular community and as a retired lawyer, I disagree with ICE's practice of incarcerating people on the basis of their immigration status, especially in conditions that subject them to the lack of access to the outdoors, possible punishment by solitary confinement, inadequate medical and mental health care, and deprivation of face-to-face contact with their family and other visitors outside. It's immoral, of dubious constitutionality, and a violation of civil rights. And as a taxpayer and resident of this county, I don't want to support this practice. It is offensive to me, and I know that I speak for many others in the county. But setting aside the inhumanity of this practice, which there appeared that many are content to overlook or are simply unaware of, there's the economic aspect. From past reports in the media, the claim is that these ICE contracts bring in millions of dollars to Sherburne County, and that may have been true at one time when most of the beds were full. I've been unable to find out how many people the jail is holding for ICE currently, but a little over a year ago, Sheriff Brott told the St. Cloud Times that he was detaining only 10 immigrants. How is this financially viable? It makes 0 sense. Sheriff Brott seemed to justify these people's incarceration based on their past criminal activity for which they were presumably already convicted and sentenced and had already done their time. But we all know that the jail has also held immigrants with no such records. Immigrants were held without probable cause to believe that a crime had occurred. The contract with ICE is also putting the county at risk for lawsuits. And this Sherburne County is already no stranger to having the jail sued for one reason or another, including a suicide not that long ago. I think they were also sued for withholding materials in their library from various inmates. Settlements, judgments, and attorney's fees also come out of taxpayer pockets. Finally, I've been told that the ICE contract will not come before the board, that the sheriff is to have sole responsibility for negotiating the contract, that there will be no open discussion among you for the residents, taxpayers, and voters of the county to review. That's just wrong. This is an important issue over the board should have oversight. I believe that you should not renew this immoral, illegal, and economically unjustifiable contract with ICE. The arc of history is long, but it bends toward justice. If you continue this contract, you are bending away from justice. You will be on the wrong side of history, not a good example to our residents and our children. Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara.
Next speaker is Brett Collier, and he'll be speaking on the abatement and drug shows.
Good morning again. Brett Collier, Big Lake. And excuse my handwriting, that was drag shows.
Oh.
As long as we've been talking about abatements, let's go back to February 20th, 2018, when Sherburne County took up an abatement request for the Garage Guys, Lupul and Brewing, that resulted in granting a $90,000 abatement that can be taken advantage over a period of 12 years. How's that going? Have they been meeting their abatement criteria? Did they create 18 additional jobs within the first 2 years? And I'm assuming those are full-time jobs, not 8-hour-a-week jobs. Are those jobs still being filled? Have they, and are they still entered into a tax abatement and business subsidy agreement as originally required by the resolution? Whereas one of the stipulations for a tax abatement is that the developer's application contribute to the fulfilling of a county strategic plan or for economic development and the Sherburne County Comprehensive Plan, do these plans include the production of drag shows? I know you're all aware that on Sunday, April 23rd, Pickens put on a drag show here in Big Lake. Was that what Sherburne County had in mind when they approved their tax abatement? The show was billed as available to only those 18 and over. Was that criteria maintained? I decided to park outside on the side road and observe if any minors were allowed to enter the facility. I saw a number of individuals, apparently younger than 18, some carrying infants with toddlers in tow, enter the building, only to be seen leaving the building 2 to 6 minutes later. It would appear that the age limit was being enforced. At 4:44, I observed 2 young girls exiting the building, jogging to their car, jogging in place as they ate something, and then jogging back to the building to re-enter. They acted as though they were under 18, but who's to say? Now, I've been to drag shows decades in the past, where performers had talent and looked like supermodels, but that's not what drag has turned into as of late. Individuals are now using drag to influence our children. Let me leave it at that. So you have to ask yourself, what type of county do you want to be? Do you want this to be the type of county that allows for the creation of an environment where children can be exposed to age-inappropriate materials that could lead to sexual abuse and trafficking? In this instance, Lupulins has entered into an agreement with the county in order to have a portion of their taxes refunded to them. Are they still keeping up their end of the bargain as asked? Does the entertainment they provide still meet the economic and comprehensive plans? I've witnessed that even as the event is advertised to only being available to 18-year-old individuals, individuals still travel to Big Lake with the goal of exposing young children to a sexually charged show. Is that what we want to be known for? Thank you.
Thanks, Brett.
Our next speaker is Kari Watkins of St. Cloud, and she'll be speaking on elections.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I will be speaking on 2 quick topics regarding elections. First, we have all heard that the election lawsuits challenging the 2020 presidential election were all lost. Well, it turns out this is not the case. According to Patrick Byrne, who includes supporting documentation, there were cases in 92 courts. 9 are still pending. 83 have been resolved. Of the 83 resolved, 53 were tossed for standing, mootness, etc. 30 were decided on the evidence. Of those 30 cases, 22 were won by Trump. Not exactly what we've been told. Next, I found an article on how the Dominion ICE voting machines were found to have the capability to print more votes on the ballot after it is inserted into the machine. This was a known defect by Dominion, and the reps selling the machine sold them as safe and effective for elections without disclosing this known flaw. But good news, ES&S sued Dominion, saying that they patented this design. So this feature has hopefully been removed by the Dominion machines, for the Dominion machines. But how ethical is Dominion to have this flaw and sell these machines anyway? I have 2 articles that explain this more in detail. I hope you read them. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Kari.
There is nobody else signed up for the open forum, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then we will move on to item number 4, that of our consent agenda. And I have been made aware that we will be pulling number
C14.
C14, thank you. So removing item number C14, we will be dealing with that immediately following the consent agenda. So with that removal, I would be open to a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I would make a motion to approve the consent agenda, removing item 4.14.
4.14, thank you. Motion's been made by Commissioner Halls. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Commissioner Felber. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion has carried. So now item 4.14 to Commissioner Felber.
The primary thing here is that we've had multiple conversations about putting the brakes on spending. And, you know, the question comes up, I understand this is just the MOU for this, but the MOU for this means we're still committed to building this thing. At this point in time, you know, I mean, this is a very expensive project. I don't see that it's going to be all completed by grants. It requires the taking of private property and a lot of other things that I basically find objectionable. But the main factor here is that it's a very, very expensive project. And in a time when we're trying to figure out where we can cut it to continue to commit to building this, I mean, for the future, it's not just this year, next year, but 5 years down the road, how much money we're going to put into this kind of a project. These types of bike paths, excuse me, I understand them. I grew up next to the Elroy Sparta Bike Trail. We used to ride our bikes 10 miles out, right up and down it. My cousins own land on it. That bike trail is still a gravel bike trail, which allows a little bit more use. But these large paved bike trails, I remember the couple that they built in Hennepin, they didn't get that much use. The one I worked next to on Highway 23 for several weeks, a few years back, there weren't that many people going by us when we were digging holes in the thing. So I think they get limited use for an awful lot of money. That's basically my objection to it.
County Attorney Haney?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I was the individual that did the initial memorandum of understanding from my office. I was also redid this one. We specifically identified that this is not a commitment of resources. So it's basically the ideas for collaboration. That was set up in the first MOU, which is in existence, and then this would be actually a successor document. And again, it preserves the interest of each of the city councils and county boards to make sure that they're making their determinations based upon what they deem their priorities to be. The only thing that this does is it gives you the communication, tries to establish, like, if you're going to go forward with a project, to try and have some consistency in how that project is done, but doesn't mandate anything. It's just more of a collaborative. So if I wasn't clear in that document, then for that, I apologize. So thank you.
Thank you. And yes, this is began in 2021. This is my end of the world for the county, and it's ensuring that all of those parties are able to be at the table with making those types of decisions going forth. This does not commit us to any funding, anything like that. It just commits that those parties will be able to work in partnership as we move forward with that the county can't just make those decisions on their own. We want partners in this because it goes through those places.
Madam,
Commissioner Halls.
I did have a question, and then I'm trying to find the sentence now, but there was a sentence in the MOU that led me to believe, similar to Commissioner Felber, that it was committing to executing on the strategic plan as written. And I'm having trouble finding the sentence now.
Is it this, recommend to the parties' respective boards a cost-sharing model?
No, it was.
Or cost allocation of professional services?
But I guess, yeah, and of course now I can't find the sentence. But I guess my concern is, as long as the MOU doesn't commit us to spending any funds, then I'm okay with it. My question is there a way that we can set up a follow-on on this? Because it's obviously this refers back to then the strategic plan over the Great Northern Trail. Is there a way that we can set up some time to discuss that? Because I do think we need to relook at that. And the specific item that I'd like to relook at is there aren't any checkpoints that I can find in the strategic plan that says based on usage as an example, then we continue on to phase whatever, so that there's some validation that what is completed is being utilized before you move on to the next section. Is there a way we can do that? Look at that?
Commissioner Halls and Commissioner Felber, Administrator Messelt.
Yeah, if the board is interested, we could schedule a workshop to talk about, one, the Parks Master Plan, and two, this particular project. Commissioner Felber is generally correct. These types of regional trails are pretty pricey. Typically, they're multi-year, sometimes multi-decade projects. Funding, the state in the last probably, I don't know, Andrew, 15 years has been making it a high priority, so there is a lot of grant funding, but sometimes there's local match requirements, and that can be done with private parties, it can be done with park dedication funds, and other counties have used levy dollars. That's a discretionary decision when you accept the grant. In terms of utilization, we'll have to look into that a little bit and see if that's checked. If not, we could maybe set something up over the next year or two to do that. So
Could we do a workshop on this?
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you're okay, what we'll do is we'll revisit the Park Master Plan since it's in process, and then specifically this project, yeah.
I'd just like to look at that as a workshop so we can have more discussion on it.
Yeah, and if it's interest to the board too, we could ask somebody to come in from the Greater Minnesota Parks and Trails group. Now, they might be a little bit advocating, but they're state agents, so they should at least talk about the trails, the benefits system-wide, because a lot of these interconnect eventually. My experience was with the Swedish Immigrant Trail, which we were building in pieces in Chisago, and ultimately it connects all the way to interstate state parks. So there's kind of a method to the madness the state's using. But again, remember, they might be a little more of the, advocate. But yeah, we'll set something up.
Yeah, and we can work through details as that gets closer. Just a side note, Rayanne and I serve on our Parks Committee, so we meet monthly. So we just met this last week. So we are discussing these types of issues, the comprehensive plan, how this trail eventually, the hopes that it would connect to the Mississippi River Trail just south. So we are at the table, this board, by representation between Rayanne and myself. So if that's helpful.
It is getting close to being finalized.
Yes.
So it will be coming before us.
It'll be perfect timing to do a workshop. So back to the MOU that's before us. So what is the wish of the board with regard to this MOU?
Madam Chair, based on the discussion we've had, that this is just a collaborative ability for us to be discussing going into the future, I would make a motion to approve it.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Danielowski. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Gray seconds. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion has carried. Thank you. Moving right along to item number 5, that of announcements. Administrator Messelt.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. This is going to sound more like a legislative briefing than anything, but that's because we're getting down to fairly late in the fourth quarter in St. Paul. Just a brief aside on calendaring, a reminder that you are scheduled for a social luncheon today, 1 p.m. at the Old Main Eatery. That has been posted as a social gathering only. Anybody from the community is obviously welcome to, attend and observe. The dinner or the lunch is on your own. It is not paid with taxpayer funds. So just a reminder of that. Also, a note of upcoming meetings, just a couple of highlights. The May 16th meeting, we're going to have a couple of additional discussions about mental health awareness. We'll talk about this being Mental Health Awareness Month, which you will discuss briefly here in a bit, but that will be a significant presentation as well as a couple of workshops. With that, if you are okay, I'll pivot to a couple other things. First of all, I hope you grabbed a cup of coffee from Options on the way in from our new coffee vendor. We're super excited that they opened yesterday. And please, if you get a chance to welcome them and thank them for being here. With respect to the legislature, I'll just go down some topics. I'll kind of give you the lay of the land. I know you're tracking this as well, so I apologize if it's repetitive, and then answer any questions the board may have. First of all, on county program aid, it appears that there is an increase in county program aid, but it's less than what was originally projected. There was some discussions of it being upwards of $100 million, and that's been pared back significantly. There's also one-time public safety aid increase that is also being discussed. Again, the final omnibus bills have it at a less than expected dollar amount, which indicates that there are some targets that are being used. And then finally, community corrections aid is also less than what was expected. And there's also a formula change. That one is probably in peril because the Department of Corrections has decided to now oppose the 2-year effort to come to a collaborative decision on increasing funding for community corrections. So we're tracking AMC's position there. Right now, our concern is that the proposed formula change plus the lower funding amount actually creates winners and losers among counties. And what that means is some counties would actually get less aid than they currently do. At that point, you have groups lobbying against the bill versus for it, as you can imagine. And of course, anytime you have a state commissioner talking to the governor and now opposing the legislation, it doesn't help as well. So all of those things we talked about on our budget slides are still very much in the air. Shifting gears, a little bit on human resources issues, also a very major topic at the legislature. There are bills that would increase and enhance benefits and protections for part-time workers. The Enhanced Family Medical Leave Act is proceeding, as is adjustments to paid family leave and paid time off. All of that is dramatically in flux, but it appears that some form or fashion will come to play, so we've been working with the implications for that. For the board's information, the most significant thing is that there is a new payroll tax that would be imposed on the employer and the employee. So that would have to be built into the budget starting, I believe it starts in as early as 24, but potentially 2025. In addition, the cost share is not set in statute or it's set in the bills. It is a minimum, which means it is negotiable. So the next round of negotiations, you could bet that the bargaining units will ask for the employer to pay a higher percentage. So that's a little bit problematic in terms of language at this point. Also still in play is legislation that would allow staffing levels to be bargained. It is in the House bill. It was taken out of the Senate bill. We expect it will be a very, very major issue in conference committee. This would shift staffing levels from currently being managerial rights to under PELRA to being a bargaining and negotiating right. So that would allow, you can imagine, nurses, unions to say we need nursing staffing levels that's so high. Theoretically, law enforcement agencies, you could have the bargain units say we need more deputies, more correctional officers. That one will be very, very interesting to watch in conference committee and has very significant implications. There is potential for compromise language that maybe it'll be a meet and confer versus a negotiating topic. And then finally, something that is changing very significantly, Juneteenth, which was set to begin in 2024, and the governor passed the bill in February to create a new holiday. There is now probably a higher than 90% chance that it will be moved up to this year. So in one of the omnibus, actually both the Senate and the House omnibus bills now has language that would make it effective on June of this year. So your staff is preparing contingencies to have that. More than likely that would require an MOU signed by this board with the bargaining units that we would have to present in early June, so it would be implemented by Juneteenth, which is the 19th of June. So more to come on that. Shifting gears, it also appears that some form of legal cannabis will be in play, meaning on July 1st, more than likely in Minnesota, possession and transport of small amounts of cannabis will be legal. There is about a year behind where there will be implementation of business licensings for dispensaries. In play are both the issues of local control and revenue sharing. And when I say local control, it doesn't mean we have the ability to say yes or no. It means that we have an ability to comment on state licensing. Generally speaking, if you're interested, the Senate bill is more local government friendly in our opinion than the House bill, but still very much in play, and the implications of that are fairly significant. And your staff's going to be sitting down here and discussing, now that it has been approved by the Senate, approved by the House, what the likely outcome will look like and the implications for law enforcement, for the county attorney's office, for probation and corrections, for health and human services, and then generally for the board as your ability to pass ordinances to kind of have some say on where these dispensaries would be located. So that's going to become a very, very major topic, I would say, within the next 6 weeks for you. Homelessness and housing is still in play, both potential mandates for how to address chronic and persistent homelessness, as well as supportive housing funding. So a little bit of good on both of those. Switching to bonding, just a little bit of reality. The old bonding bill, which was last year's bill, failed. There is a possibility it could be resurrected. We did have $2 million in there for the Zimmerman overpass. But there's also an equal likely chance that the Democratic-controlled House and Senate may pass a cash-only bonding bill, in which case we may not have as much likelihood to get the overpass funded in that particular process. Switching to the transportation bill, it also appears there won't be earmarks, which means that we're going to be in a tough position this year at the state level to get construction dollars for that particular project. And then just to note, broadband funding is included, but it's not at a level that some of our broadband advocates have been asking for at the state level. But at least that state funding and the priority is still reflected somewhat in the legislation. So with that, I'll stand for any questions. We're tracking this pretty closely, and we'll make sure that you're updated as well.
Any questions or comments? In my personal experience, there's a long 3 weeks left, and everything is still in play. Could change drastically. So thank you for that. Moving on now, we have some recognition by proclamations, and I've asked the sheriff to provide sheriff staff that you might not see every day or week or month here as board members. So our first proclamation is designating the week of May 7th through 13th as Correctional Officers Week in Sherburne County. Welcome, and if you could introduce yourself.
Sure. Good morning. My name is Dave Isaias. I'm the Assistant Jail Administrator here for Sherburne County, and I will read the National Correctional Officer Week 2023 proclamation. Whereas in 1987, Congress passed and President Ronald Reagan signed Public Law 99-611, proclaiming the first week of May as National Correctional Officers Week. Whereas the operation of correctional detention facilities represents a crucial component of our criminal justice system, and whereas correctional officers play a vital role protecting the rights of the public to be safeguarded from criminal activity, whereas the correctional personnel are responsible for the safety and dignity of the human beings charged with their care, whereas the correctional personnel work under demanding circumstances and face danger in their daily work lives, often sacrificing personal and family time to provide necessarily but thankless, unrecognized, and behind-the-scenes service to the public. Whereas the staff of Sherburne County Sheriff's Office have continually demonstrated their skill, professionalism, in running one of the finest facilities in the state.
Thanks, Dave. And I believe these are important for us to recognize for our staff and the service they provide to our community. Thank you for coming and read the proclamation. So now therefore be it resolved, I, Lisa Phoebe, Chairperson, Sherburne County Board, do hereby proclaim the week of May 7th through 13th as Correctional Officers Week in Sherburne County and encourage all citizens to recognize the commitment and outstanding contributions made by Sherburne County's correctional personnel, dated this date, May 2023. And I'd ask the board for action item to approve this proclamation.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Halls.
I'll
second
second.
Seconded by the whole dais because of the importance. Commissioner Danielowski seconds. Again, thank you, and please thank your staff. This is important work. We value this work, and are pleased to be able to celebrate this with you. Any
Madam
other
Chair, if I may
comments?
comment?
Please.
I only worked 6 years inside facility, but I can't overestimate how difficult this work is for the people that do it. And when you choose to make a career working inside a facility, the environment that's inside a facility, I mean, having to go in there every day with people that have nothing to think about all day but whether they want to hurt you. I mean, the people that do this for a living, you have to have the highest respect for them. Thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of my staff, thank you for your support over the years.
Thank you for your service.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thanks again. Moving on to our second proclamation today, that of celebrating the week of May 14th through 20th as Police Officers Week in Sherburne County. Thank you, Mr. Steve Duran. If you could introduce yourself for the board.
I sure will, Madam Chair, Commissioners, good morning. Steve Duran, I work as the Chief Deputy for the Sheriff's Office in Sherburne. Thank you first for allowing this to happen today. So whereas there are approximately 900,000 law enforcement officers serving in communities across the United States, including the dedicated members of the Sherburne County Sheriff's Office, whereas nearly 50,000 assaults against law enforcement officers are reported each year, resulting in approximately 13,000 injuries. Whereas since the first recorded death in 1791, more than 22,000 law enforcement officers in the U.S. have made the ultimate sacrifice and been killed in the line of duty, including one member of the Sherburne County Sheriff's Office. Whereas the names of these dedicated public servants are engraved on the walls of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington, D.C., whereas 556 new names of fallen heroes are being added to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial this spring, including 224 officers killed in 2022. Whereas the service and sacrifice of all officers killed in the line of duty will be honored during the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund's 35th Annual Candlelight Vigil that will be held on May 13th, 2023, whereas May 15th is designated as Peace Officers Memorial Day in honor of all the fallen officers, their families, and U.S. flags should be flown at half-staff.
Therefore, be it resolved that the Sherburne County Board of Commissioners formally designates May 14th through 20th, 2023 as Police Week in Sherburne County and publicly salutes the service of law enforcement officers in our community and in communities across the nation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
I just-
Actually, I'll be open to a motion to approve this proclamation.
I'll make
So
that
moved.
motion.
Oh, or she can either
I'll
one.
second.
This is a great. Commissioner Felber moves and Commissioner Danielowski seconds it. Any comments?
I just want to say I can't thank our officers enough, especially in the current environment. It's always been a dangerous job, but for some reason, it has elevated to, I just pray for our officers all the time, and especially what has just transpired here recently in the last month, losing 2 officers in Wisconsin and 1 here in Minnesota. And I want to say the outpouring of support that came for that family in Minnesota for that fallen officer was amazing. And thank you so much for what you do to protect us every day and put yourselves at great risk in doing that job. I can't say it enough.
Well, thank you. I can speak for the members of our office that they are absolutely committed to the citizens of Sherburne, and they do appreciate the support, and they feel it. So thank you for your words.
Yeah, we've got a great department here. It's fantastic. I'm just really happy. Obviously, I'm always in favor of it, having retired from that myself, but thank you.
Obviously, share our sentiment with your staff also.
Yes. I do have one question. Are we doing something? I know in the past we've done some kind of ceremony. Is that being scheduled? And can you put that out there as to what that is going to be?
I certainly can. Typically, it takes place out front near the flagpole. We have a chaplain who's Tom Sterneman, who's been with us for a number of years. So he'll say a few words. I think there's usually some cookies involved. And So we'll make a short ceremony, and we can certainly get you the date. I don't know it offhand at this moment.
Okay, I would appreciate that. And then there also is a or a gun, I think it's from the
There is a volley,
Minnesota.
correct.
Yeah,
Yeah, by the members of our honor guard.
yes, okay. It is a really, really a neat ceremony to watch. It touches your heart.
Okay, we do have a motion and a second supporting this proclamation, so all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion has carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have one other, recognizing, approving the proclamation, the month of May 2023 as Mental Health Awareness Month. Thank you, Ms. Amanda Larson, for joining us.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners, and we'll actually have a short presentation at the second board meeting of the month, but wanted to read the proclamation now. Whereas nearly 1 in 5 adults and 1 in 5 adolescents in the United States live with a mental illness, and whereas mental health impacts a person's emotional, social, environmental, financial, and overall well-being with significant disparities among racially and ethnically diverse communities, and whereas suicide is now the second leading cause of death for 15 to 24-year-olds, with teenagers experiencing a 17.3% increase in the use of anxiety medication since 2010, whereas 1/3 of the United States population lives in a county designated as a mental health professional shortage area, and whereas an estimated 44% of residents detained in jails are suffering from a mental illness, often with a co-occurring substance use disorder, and whereas Sherburne County and all counties serve as a safety net for residents in need, first responders, and the operator of crisis lines, public hospitals, and detention centers. Now, therefore, let it be proclaimed that Sherburne County Board of Commissioners declares May as Mental Health Awareness Month in Sherburne County to highlight the critical role in the county of providing crucial behavioral health services and resources to its residents. And be it further proclaimed that the Sherburne County Board of Commissioners continues its commitment to partner with our community members to ensure that all mental health services are accessible, valuable, and culturally appropriate for all residents.
Thank you. And I'd be open to a motion to approve this.
Madam Chair, I'll make that motion.
Motion made by
I'll second that.
Commissioner Danielowski, seconded by Commissioner Gray. Any comments or questions? No. Many of you know I've lost both my brothers to mental illness and chemical dependency, so forever grateful. It's why I continue to do the work I do in many, many ways. So, and this also is so connected to our corrections and our law enforcement.
Absolutely.
Maybe wasn't so much that way 40, 50, 60, 100 years ago, but now it is. They're intrinsically connected, so it's great that we're celebrating this all in the same month. And again, a field that people have put their heart and soul into this, so appreciate your staff so much. Okay. Any others?
Totally concur with everything you just said. We are at a crisis.
Okay. So all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion has carried. Thank you. Okay, so moving on now to agenda item number 4. Receive an update on the Great River Regional Library. Ms. Karen Punsek and company joins us from the Great River Regional Library. So I'll just turn it over to you.
Good morning. I'm Karen Punsek. I'm Executive Director for Great River Regional Library. It's great to see Commissioner Phoebe again. She's on our board. And then Commissioner Danielowski, who's been a long time library advocate. It's also great to meet all the new commissioners from Sherburne County. I'd like to introduce 2 members of our staff who are with us today as well.
I'm Jeanette Burkhart. I'm the Patron Services Supervisor for the Sherburne County Libraries.
And I'm Margot Berry. I am the Library Services Coordinator for Becker Library and Big Lake Library.
And Great River is a 6-county partnership. We come to our counties twice a year, once at the beginning of the year to just report on the past year's activities, and then later in the year when we are at budget time. We want to give you an overview of how this system works, knowing that 3 of you are new commissioners and so may not have been watching the library very closely before this year. We are a 6-county partnership, as I mentioned. We're in Stearns, Sherburne, Wright, Benton, Todd, and Morrison counties. And through that entire region, we operate as one library across those 6 counties and operate all of the libraries in those locations. So we have 32 buildings that we operate in partnership with our local cities. And then we have a locker system in Sartell called GRL To Go that's kind of its own special system in and of itself. The cities provide the buildings, and then Great River provides the services. So computers, the people that run the buildings, and then the books inside. So it's a great collaboration. We're one of the most efficient library systems in the state of Minnesota, and at the same time have one of the largest collections in the state of Minnesota. So we're very proud of the ability to offer efficient library service across that 6-county area. We passed a new strategic plan a couple of years ago and added our theory of change statement that you can see on the bottom there. We exist so that people in our communities can find and use trusted information they need to thrive. And we are committed to doing that every single day. In this slide, you can see some of the high-level activities of the library system last year. In addition, you can see the 4 libraries that represent services to Sherburne County. We have in the upper left-hand corner the Becker Library, that's part of the Becker Community Center, the Big Lake Library, which is part of the complex that includes the Big Lake Police Department. And then on the bottom left-hand side, you can see the Elk River Library, which is the second largest library in the system. And on the bottom right, the St. Cloud Public Library, which is not only the largest library in our system, but one of the largest libraries in the state. About 8% of Sherburne County residents use St. Cloud as their primary location. So we do consider that a Sherburne County library, even if it's not physically located in Sherburne County. As you know, St. Cloud's very unique in that it's located in 3 different counties, and all 3 of them are counties that we serve. One of the highlights from last year was the number of new borrowers registering for cards across the region in the library system. We had over 18,000 people decide they wanted a new card last year. And that was one of the highest levels of new card registration we've ever seen. So we are seeing a comeback from COVID. We dialed back. We did as much as we could when we couldn't be operating full-fledged to the public. But as we've been moving into this new phase, we are seeing a strong response from people across the 6-county area. The other thing that's really changed over the past 3 years is the amount of digital library activity. Pre-COVID, we were seeing that as one of our stronger libraries, but it continues to see exponential growth. Just 11% increase last year. We're seeing another 29% this year, and it has moved to the point of being the 2nd largest circulating library in the system, second only to St. Cloud. So it's really a new area of growth for the library system. It's been around since about 2010, but it continues to see more and more people who want to use that service. One of our major initiatives last year was our fines-free effort. We moved to going fines-free on library materials last year, and this was kind of a 10-year phase-in project. We started with Read Down Your Fines back in, I think, 2012, where people donated money and we allowed kids to read some minutes and then we'd waive their fines, and that was very well received. And then in June of 2019, the board decided to try going fines-free on juvenile materials only, just to see what would happen. What we saw was a strong spike in increase in juvenile materials. So when we entered the pandemic, it was kind of interesting because we moved into a phase of where we didn't want books back for quite a long time. We weren't really sure if they were a vector at one point in time. We were quarantining materials. And so it changed that fines revenue pretty dramatically. And what we also learned was that was no longer an area of revenue that we could count on. And it wasn't just a revenue line that reflected fines. It also reflected things like our print-to-go service, so copies and prints that people pay for, and lost materials. So with that decline in revenue, we decided to forego it completely because it was just the right thing to do. And we also learned we've built a lot of efficiency in the budget itself. So what we moved to fines-free last year, we budgeted $40,000 for that revenue line with the anticipation that we were losing a revenue stream that had been pretty significant at one point and had significantly declined. What we found was we actually collected 6 figures last year. So even though there was a decline in revenue, it was offset by some of the other growth areas like our print-to-go service. And we also found a lot of efficiencies. So we were able to remove our credit card payment terminals and no longer have to pay credit card fees on those transactions. So we are actually saving money in addition. So it was a really interesting project. We're continuing to watch it, but it was definitely not the revenue decline that we thought might continue. It actually was a complete opposite experience. The other thing that it did was it allowed access to people who, especially those with transportation barriers, and that impacts people across the entire region. Whether you're someone who just doesn't have a car, someone who's in a rural community, and especially our kids who are the ones who are, checking out the books and can't drive themselves back to get them back on time. So now we only collect fees for books if they never come back, and we have a process for collecting that. But for what we are seeing is that the juvenile material growth continues to climb because of removing that barrier to access. The other big initiative last year was our Wi-Fi to Go project, which started out as a pilot project out in Pierce Library with some fund development donation dollars. And going into COVID, we saw there was a need for those services. We also received some state money to expand that project. So what was a 5 hotspot, 1 library project about 5 years ago has now become a 300 hotspot across the entire region project, where anyone can come into the library and either reserve a hotspot to be checked out for 3 weeks, or if there's one on the shelf, you can check it out for 1 week on demand, and you have unlimited data use wherever you take that. And so I know Jeanette's going to talk a little bit about how that project is working in real life, but it's been really fabulous to see the growth of that project and meet the need of people where they're at. So we're continuing to receive state funding for those hotspots, and we'll continue to offer that service as long as we can. And then last year was also a banner year for our summer reading program. We had more kids sign up for summer reading program. We had over 12,000 kids across the region. And that's one of the efforts we're really trying to expand, because we know that not only do we have the summer slide that we're dealing with in terms of kids literacy, now we're also seeing a pandemic slide that we are trying to combat. And so we're trying to be strong partners with our schools to offer that service and continue to keep kids reading all summer. And I'll turn the mic over now to Jeanette. She can talk a little bit about some of the projects on the next slide. If I can figure out, there we go.
So I'm just going to tell a little bit of the story for the Wi-Fi to Go. Initially, when that rolled out, the idea was that people that were working home remotely or kids that needed to have that needed Wi-Fi to be able to attend school would be our target audience. And what we've actually seen over the course of having these Wi-Fi hotspots are a lot of people taking them on the road. So the RVers at Otsego campground, they'll come and check them out, use them for the 3 weeks, return them. I've heard stories of other patrons taking them to other campgrounds throughout the state and using them in the car to entertain their children. So just, it's been a great service and a lot of use. I actually looked online last night and we had 185 available, but with 220 requests on the 300 that are requestable. And what I usually see when I'm traveling around the branches is that there aren't usually any sitting on the counter or waiting to be checked out. The ones that are on demand are usually gone. The other thing on this slide that I was going to talk about was the historical graphic novel teen book club that's available in Elk River. This is a fairly new program that is led by one of our newest assistants, and she has been able to grow that program from 6 participants to just recently opening up to 20. So she's done a very good job at it. The participants are very excited about it and have a lot of say in what they're reading. So yes, Sophia's done a great job with that program.
Okay, I want to talk about engagement. The last slide you can see is Family Engineering Night in Becker. We have a wonderful staff person over in Becker who has developed and runs a wonderful storytime program, but wanted to expand learning to older children and also connect with families more. This evening was it was a test. She came up with 6 activities. They had to do with civil engineering, packaging engineering, I think it was chemical engineering, 6 different types of engineering that reflected skills sets like development, testing, um, using very simple tool, and also failure. I want to say that was really important for her to have the cause and effect and the failure and the ability to address why something worked or didn't work. All of these sites were using very simple tools, paper, dominoes, cones, very simple things. It was very cost effective and it was very, very well received. Parents, grandparents and their children came in and worked together. This was all about collaborative work. So there's communication skills being developed, and again, coming back and using these engineering language and engineering thinking to create get through the tasks. The families were so happy with it that they all talked to Mary, this is our staff person who developed this, and were enthusiastic about continuing this program. So she developed 3 more programs that'll go through the summer in a similar format, but going a little more deeply into 1 or 2 activities. We are very, very good at listening to our communities and also bringing something new to our communities, and then reflecting on it and making tweaks and changes and enhancements to better connect what our communities want and what they need to the library and connecting to the library out in the community. So this was a planned event. I wanted to just mention quickly, in our Big Lake Library, one of my favorite days of the week is Friday. And the reason why is I have a lot of families coming in on Fridays, and families can mean different things. I just want to tell you briefly about a few of the families. One of them is a set of grandparents that come in with their grandchildren. And I've observed them. I've actually only talked to them a few times, but they come in, the grandparents sit down in the cozy chairs, take out a newspaper, grab a magazine, the grandkids go and look for books. They spend about 15 or 20 minutes looking for books, and then the grandkids come back to the chairs and sit with their grandparents, and they read and look through the books, and they talk, and then they go out and about and do other things in the library and come back together, and then they go. Another family is a brother and a sister. They're either on their way from or to a martial arts program because they're dressed in their white gear. And they come in, one goes directly to the catalog, sits down, spends the entire time ordering books to be reserved. The other one goes strategically to different shelves, pulls things, checks them out. He checks or pulls his holds and checks them out, and they leave together very quickly. Always lovely and wonderful. Another family is a mother, a homeschooling family. They come in, she comes in with her 3 girls every single week. They have a giant bag that says library on it. They put all the books in the book drop, and then they disperse. And mom sits and waits, and all the girls come back to her, and they sit and they talk and they read and they connect. And if there are other families, they talk and read and connect. It's a wonderful way. It's unplanned, but it's a real reflection, another reflection of what our libraries do, is they do bring people together. They give them access to information and entertainment and just whatever these kids are thinking. It's just wonderful to see. They know what they want. They come in and they do. And I think the library offers that opportunity. And it connects back to the other parts of their community. So I just wanted to reflect on the families in 2 different ways, the planned and the unplanned, and how important those are to our communities. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeanette and Margot. As you can see, we have really passionate staff at Great River, and I'm extremely proud of them all. The last thing I just want to say is thank you for your support of the library system. You know, Sherburne County is a major partner in the decision-making at the Great River Board table. We've got not only Commissioner Phoebe, but also Mary Eberly and Jane Dietz as Sherburne County representatives on that board. And we just really enjoy hearing the different perspectives from each county and how that helps shape and expand how library services are offered across all of our region. So thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions, as would Jeanette or Margot as well.
Thank you so much for your report. Any questions or comments from the board? This is a levy item for our county, so it is a financial responsibility of ours that we take. But we, as a library board, work hard to keep that really low. So, yeah.
Madam Chair. I'd like to thank you all for your passion and your service into making sure libraries stay relevant and viable. This is, like Commissioner Philby referred to, it is a levy item, but we do work in partnership with all of our cities that do host the library sites. And I'm a firm believer that I would never want to see a library go away. I think it's, people like to say, well, you can get it on screen or by internet. I don't ever want to see us lose a hard book that you can touch and you can smell and you can read through. I think it's vitally important, and I just want to say thank you for the hotspot idea. During COVID, I did witness several times young people, one of the ones that sticks in my mind, for example, obviously did not have the ability to have internet at his home, and so he was out front of our Big Lake Library in the dark, sitting under the light by the front door of the library, and sitting on the concrete to get the Wi-Fi to do his homework. And I just am so happy to see that that doesn't have to be the reality for a lot of our young people anymore. But I do want to say thank you so much for the services and the partnership in the community that has grown over time in regards to library services. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, it's not just the books.
Oh, no.
Services.
We'd be here all day if we told you everything, so.
I know.
Thanks.
Thanks. This isn't an action item. This is just receiving an update on their services and our partnership with them. So moving on to agenda item number 5, Lori Rolson from Central Minnesota Council of Aging, another one of our partners. This is also an update from the Central Minnesota Council on Aging.
Thank you.
And I was trying to think, Lori, when is the last time you were in front of this board?
It's been a while. Usually I come and request funding, and I'm not doing that today. So it's been a while, and I can't quite figure out how to get this to, oh, there we go. Okay. So no, it must have been you. Oh, they turned it. Okay. Now it's okay. Thank you. So thank you for having me today. I'm Lori Burles. I'm the director of the Central Minnesota Council on Aging, and we are a nonprofit organization, but we're designated by the Minnesota Board on Aging at the state level to serve as the area agency on aging for the 14-county area, which includes Sherburne County here. And one of our key responsibilities as the Area Agency on Aging is to allocate out federal Older Americans Act dollars to support older adults to remain living in their own homes with supportive services. And so we have a board of directors. Commissioner Philby serves on our board. And when we receive the Older Americans Act funding, we go through a funding process to allocate that out to our provider partners. At the federal level, at the state level, the Minnesota Board on Aging is going through a process right now of redoing their interstate funding formula, and that determines how the $20+ million that Minnesota receives of the Federal Older Americans Act is distributed amongst the 6 regional area agencies on aging and the 1 tribal area agency on aging. And then through this funding is, once we receive it, we work to award it out. Some of the key services that are provided: nutrition, Meals on Wheels, congregate dining, transportation, chore, homemaker, caregiver supports, health promotion. Those are all types of services that are funded through this Older Americans Act funding. The primary purpose and target population of our Older Americans Act, it's meant for individuals 60+, but we're targeting the low income, the frail individuals who we're working to provide them with some basic support services so they can remain living at their home. So the one unique aspect of the Older Americans Act services is that The only eligibility is 60+. And so unlike the waivered services that you manage here at the county, there's no means testing of looking at the assets and income for individuals to qualify. And then the services are provided on a donation basis. So we really try to think of our Older Americans Act services as being kind of that safety net to try to keep people off of going on to public assistance. In the 14-county area, this chart here just depicts that in 2022, we served just over 30,000 older adults in the 14-county area. We awarded out $3.9 million to 19 providers. So that 30,000 individuals, that's about 1 in every 5 older adults in the region are impacted by the Older Americans Act services. We have 176,000 older adults in our 14-county region. And I would just also like to thank the Sherburne County Board on an annual basis. You provide us with just over $4,000 of administrative match that allows us to draw down this federal funding and then allocate that out to our provider partners. I wanted to highlight specifically for Sherburne County what was the direct impact last year by our provider partners. So you can see the service levels being provided, for example, 327 rides. Those were mainly to medical appointments. Dialysis is a big one there. Social service appointments, 55 hours of chore. That was mainly putting in like grab rails in a bathroom, lawn mowing, snow shoveling this winter. 90 hours of homemaking services. 14 individuals participated in 8-week multi-sessions of health prevention programs focused on Tai Chi and matter of balance specifically. So falls prevention. Our largest category of funding is our nutrition, and so that's where you see just over 600 individuals from Sherburne County receive nearly 40,000 meals, and that's both in congregate dining and home-delivered meals, specifically of Sherburne County residents. And then 117 hours by Midman Legal Services for 335 hours of legal counsel, and then the caregiver services. So that's kind of the direct impact of that $256,000, almost $257,000 in Sherburne County last year. So as I said, at the state level, the Minnesota Board on Aging has been asked by the Administration of Community Living at the federal level to relook at the funding formula that is used. It has not been updated since 2004, so it's been almost 20 years over 20 years that funding formula has been in place. And so the Board on Aging is a 25-member governor-appointed board, and they've been directed that they have to provide by July 1st a revised interstate funding formula for how that Older Americans Act funding will be allocated out. And so over the course of this last year, they've gone through various iterations. They're on draft 5 now of the formula. And they are just finishing up public comment that goes until May 3rd for individuals and entities to provide input on the funding formula. So when the state looks at the funding formula, they've looked at different factors. Well, the eligibility is 60+. They've also looked at, you know, with the targeting of the Older Americans Act, what other factors and weights do they want to assign? So what this chart here depicts is where the current formula, you can see that 55% is weighted on the 60+. They're looking to move that to 30%, and then adding in living with disabilities and living alone. So this chart here kind of just depicts how you can see a change of what they're looking at doing with the funding formula. So moving the 60+ down does benefit our region. It benefits outstate in general because the metro area is really where we've seen the growth of the 60+ population. So they have the 7-county metro area has more older adults 60-plus residing in the metro area. But when you look at the 85-plus population, which is generally the population served with these Older Americans Act services, they tend to live in rural outstate. So we've really done a lot of advocacy to try to decrease the 60-plus, increase the rural population, and adding the 60-plus living with disabilities to really focus in on that frail population. And then you can see that they've also increased the 60-plus minority population. A parallel process that's happening is that the state will be releasing in May an opportunity. Right now there's 6 area agencies on aging and 1 tribal AAA that covers 4 of the 11 reservations. They will be lifting all the planning and service areas in the state and allowing the opportunity for the 11 tribes to determine whether or not they would like to apply as a area agency on aging or go under the Minnesota Tribal Area Agency on Aging. And then also if there's any existing area agencies on aging that would like to change their planning and service area, primarily because of the impact of the funding formula. Our board has met, and we will not be submitting in a request to change our 14-county area. For those, just kind of a reference point, back in 2010, there used to be 14 area agencies on aging, and then the state consolidated the 14 down to 6. So our agency used to just cover Stearns, Benton, Sherburne, and Wright, and then we with the consolidation, we assumed the responsibility for 2 other additional area agencies on aging. I believe that with the changes that are being proposed in the interstate funding formula, that there's the high probability that we'll see in the future further consolidation of area agencies on aging. I don't think that it will necessarily come from the state putting it out, but it will come from the area agencies on aging not being able to have the infrastructure needed with the revised formula. So what you see here is just a snapshot of the current allocation. What you see is that we received 13.68% of the current allocation. And then the what you see in the green is what the Minnesota Board on Aging is proposing right now. That almost $700,000 that is slated for the Metropolitan Area Agency on Aging, you see that in green. That is not increased dollars. That is dollars shifting from outstate to the 7-county metro area. The Older Americans Act funding has been flat for years, and even though we see an increased aging population, our funding has been remaining flat. So what you will see there is that our region is actually slated to receive an increase, but we're the only outstate area agency on aging that is. And you can see by the numbers, some are going to be reduced very substantially, and that's where I talk about kind of that crippling effect for at least 2 of the rural area agencies on aging. So the outstate area agencies on aging are proposing what's in yellow there, which does increase it decreases the 60-plus factor and increases the rural factor. And that creates more of a balance that we believe is more supportive of older adults in outstate Minnesota. I have this slide just to highlight at a local level what the impacts of the funding formula are. So as I said, nutrition is the largest category of funding that we receive. And if I look at 2021 data, I can see that there was 57,000 older adults across the state of Minnesota that were served with meals through the Older Americans Act funding. Our 14-county area, we received that 13.68% of the funding, but we provided 20% of all meals in 2021. In comparison, the 7-county metro area provided 13% of all the meals in the state, but they received 41% of the funding. So there's an imbalance based on what the needs are, and the service delivery models are very different for the 7-county metro area than what they are for outstate. In addition to trying, for example, with the meals, in addition to trying to serve individuals that are very frail and low income, we're also trying to serve, for example, food desert areas. And it's as much about food access as it is about the low income aspect for many individuals that are being served in outstate. So my request to the county board today is to look at providing comment onto the, there's an email address that I can share with administrator, and a sample letter, but those are due May 3rd. But I would request that there be comment provided that really looks at decreasing the 60-plus population and increasing the rural factor by another 5%. And we believe this combination of this formula will really lead, once again, to that rebalancing to support older adults in rural Minnesota. This formula is very important. Like I said, the last one, we've had it for over 20 years. This one will likely be in place for years to come as well before they relook at it again. So with that, are there any questions?
Thanks, Lori. Any questions or comments? It's a lot for us, but I think if you can provide us that link and clear direction and of what we're looking for and suggested comments, that would be really helpful. So,
Madam Chair, I also want to comment with the current environment of where inflation is going and the budgets that a lot of our seniors have to live on, where it's mainly probably just Social Security, their access to affordable housing. It's difficult out in greater Minnesota to find those senior needs that can be met in housing because the cost to build a facility is so large. So I'm concerned when I see this process unfolding like this, that they aren't acknowledging the needs of greater Minnesota and our aging population as well. So yes, if you could send us the link and anything we can do to help support that, because I don't see, I just see the numbers that our seniors are struggling.
Yes, thank you. And in your packet, I believe there is a sample letter and then the link for the comment. And then I can also provide that to Bruce as well.
that would be great.
Lori, I had one other question. Is there any way that there's a tracking? Because a lot of times, if you're not getting your needs met out here in the community, in the rural community you grew up in, you might be forced to go somewhere where there's that ability, and maybe it is somewhat in the metro. Do we have any tracking numbers of seniors that are sometimes forced to move outside of their area?
You know, that's I know that we do have some of that for like nursing home level of care, but in terms of people that are moving from their home into the cities, I don't know of any data source on that right now. I do know that for years, one of the publications that we would put together every year was a housing guide, and that was for the 14-county area. That lists what the assisted living and independent living options are available, as well as services remain in your home. And the reason why we've done that is because we do see we do see people calling the Senior Linkage Line, which is one of the programs that we operate on a daily basis, where they're looking to move, or they're looking to move their parents, or the individuals themselves are looking to move into larger communities that have more services. And often it's a matter of helping them understand what are the local resources that are available. I mean, we have we have a service system that's really a maze, both in terms of locating services and figuring out how to pay for services. And so that's one of the things we try to do with the senior linkage line is help people understand what are not only the formal services, but the informal programs that are available that can help individuals remain still living in their own communities.
Okay, others? Bruce?
Just to be clear, is the board's desire to have you individually make comments, or did you want us to do a letter on behalf of the board? And if you do, then either by consensus or a motion, we could prepare that.
Would we want to do a combined letter from the board? Board be okay with that? I can work on that with Bruce. Okay, sure.
Yep.
Why don't we do that? Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, thanks, Lori.
Thank you. And that's what most of the counties have been doing is one letter coming from the board, but certainly feel
Okay,
free to send
great.
your own as
Yep.
well.
Send your own individual comments also, that's helpful, thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 6, consider and approve the combined position request of a right-of-way specialist, Mr. Andrew Witter.
Morning, Madam Chair, County Board members. Appreciate the opportunity to help explain a situation that we've got going on within Public Works. I tried to describe it as best as possible within the background, but it's not exactly the most simple situation to describe. So what we have going on is we have effectively 2 half-time positions that we would like to combine into one full-time position. We've got a half-time right-of-way specialist, which helps out our right-of-way agent in regards to processing property acquisitions, coordinating with some of the property owners on some of the minor items, coordinating with businesses like banks to get mortgage releases because we need to get releases from all interested parties when we're acquiring properties and easements. So we've got formal approval both from the county board for the position and the budget previously for that position. Next to that, we also have a half-time administrative support assistant, which we have previously received budget approval for. However, we never formally received position approval from the county board. So really that's what we're requesting today is the position approval for that half-time administrative assistant so that we can combine that into one full-time position to better serve, our public and assist with the delivery of our design projects and our construction projects. So that's kind of the background. Stepping back a little bit further, this is a critical position for Public Works. It's very front-facing for us, this property acquisition aspect of being out there, sitting at individuals' kitchen tables, working with them directly. Sometimes they're kind of the first face-to-face contact, aside from phone contact and things like that. So it also gets very involved with the county attorney's office and dealing with outside entities and agencies, as I had kind of mentioned before. We were fortunate for many, many years to have an individual in this position that was solid and extremely efficient. And she had opted to retire. Awesome, great for her. So we've been in a little bit of a transition for the last couple of years. We've got somebody that's really solid in the right-of-way agent position right now, and we didn't want to do anything with this support position until we got that achieved. The way we've been handling this responsibility of support is the individual I was mentioning earlier who had retired was willing to come back and work part-time to help not only mentor our new right-of-way agent, but also assist with a number of these duties that this position would handle. So with that, hopefully I explained it fairly well, but I will open it for any questions that you might have. I will finish out by saying there is zero budget implication to this. It's already been approved for actually a couple of years within the budget, and we've been utilizing those funds for bringing our retiree back part-time.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, so just so I'm clear, so you have filled the halftime position, one of the halftime positions, the other halftime position never filled because there was budget but not approval for that halftime position. And now what you're doing, and you've been using those dollars for contract, for lack of a better term, for the retiree. And now what you're wanting to do is combine that into a single position for that person that's been part of the halftime position, correct?
So, Madam Chair, Commissioner Halls, little point of clarification there. We haven't physically filled that position with an individual. So both of the halftime positions that are noted in the board packet have been vacant, but we've been utilizing our retiree to help fill those needs in the interim. So we would still need to go out and advertise for this one full-time position. We don't have anybody in that halftime position other than the retiree that we're bringing back, as you mentioned, and utilizing as essentially a contractor. Does that make sense? Okay. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Danielewski.
and I'm assuming in the current environment, it would be challenging to find 2 part-time people to take on some pretty major roles. And so the combination of that into one person, to me, sounds like it makes a lot of sense. Because these are vital roles in the amount of road projects that are being done. And this person will fill how smoothly that can go at times if you have people that can get the process started on the right foot.
Yes, correct. Madam Chair, Commissioner Danielewski, thanks for bringing that up. This is a very specialized position. Those people aren't out there on the street. And as we've noticed with our struggles over the last couple of years during transition, this is going to be an awesome opportunity for succession planning, bringing somebody in at a lower level that can help learn the process so that we don't end up in a situation as we have in the past where we have a sole individual doing this work that either leaves or retires, and we're, for lack of a better term, in trouble.
Yeah, and building that relationship with the people along any roadway is critical in regards to the project.
Correct.
Others? This is an action item. So what is the board wishes for approving a combined position request for a right-of-way specialist?
Madam Chair, I'll make that motion to approve that request.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Danielewski,
I'll second that.
seconded by Commissioner Gray. Any other comments or questions? I just would like to maybe look at our policy of, I don't think this retirement ever came before the board of this one person.
Because we would have said, no, you can't
Because I
do
would have
that.
said no. So please pass that along.
Absolutely.
And I do want to say that I can't emphasize enough how important this kind of a role is in regards to, I know that we've got some major road projects, I'm going to say County Road 43 being one of them, that probably struggled a little through the process because of the current situation.
Correct.
And, yeah, so.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion has carried.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 7, 6.7, consider approve the American Rescue Plan update and recommended approval expenditures. Mr. Dan Weber.
This week, we only have one expense under the $50,000 threshold, and it's for a digital measuring tool. This will make assessors a lot more efficient because they can go out to a property instead of carrying their tape measure. It takes probably 5-10 minutes to go around a house. They can stand in one spot and just click. So as the county continues to grow, we're looking for tools that make assessors more efficient as opposed to hiring new staff. And this is one that'll be very effective.
Okay, what is the wish of the board?
Motion to approve.
Okay, motion's been made by Commissioner Halls,
Second that.
seconded by Commissioner Falber. Any questions or comments for this $3,400 assessor digital measuring tool? One-time capital expense.
Dan, how long do they last? What do you think the lifespan of this is?
I would say 5 to 8 years.
Okay.
And that's what they used to be. These are more, they've come a long way in the last 10 years, so it might even be longer than that.
Okay.
Dan, is one enough? Would
Oh,
that
there's
be-
9 of them as part of this request.
There is, okay.
My apologies if I didn't
All right.
9 of them.
clarify that.
Right.
So it'd be one for each appraiser.
Okay, perfect.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion has carried.
Next up is the dispatch center and Zimmerman improvements, and I'm going to invite Matt up to the podium to talk about that project.
Commissioners, Madam Chair, good morning. Matt Albrecht, Information Services Director with the Sheriff's Office. Excuse me, this request for your consideration is a continuation of our April 18th board workshop covering the Sheriff's Office proposal to add a secondary dispatch center to the county public services. To recap from our discussion, the capital needs for this project are $1,471,931. And this would come from two sources, being both E911 funds, in addition to $500,000 in ARPA funding. The ARPA funding has already been approved by the ARPA committee, and that would only require board approval for moving forward. With that, the purpose of this discussion would be to both request the approval for the project, and more specifically, request the approval for the $500,000 in ARPA funding. And with that, I will pause for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Matt. Any questions or comments? We did discuss this at length at our April 18th workshop. Appreciate that background information. If not, I'd be open to a motion.
I would move we approve this.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Felber. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Danielowski. Any other? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion has carried. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And the last item is a resident emergency assistant program, and I'm going to turn it over to Gene Anderson for that program description.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. The request for your consideration is for $100,000 ARPA funding to be used for emergency assistance, and it would particularly be to target low-income households within our county who have experienced deep and impactful negative economic impacts since the pandemic. We continue to see a rise in applications for assistance, for public assistance programs, but also for housing assistance for those who are at risk of becoming homeless. This funding would be directed towards low-income individuals, families who are in a crisis situation and at risk of losing their housing or having their utilities disconnected. This would help us to be able to assist those folks to bring them to some stability. Are there any questions?
Okay, any questions? No. Okay, there was quite, the outline was in our packet.
We are still working on some language with this policy, just to clarify.
Okay, and we really, I remember us knowing that we would have some people, especially after all the pandemic resources,
yes,
be at these critical junctures in life, and to be able to help someone stay in a home or keep their electrical going or whatever it is, critical for their success.
Absolutely, and we're seeing a rise, particularly since the eviction moratorium has ended, and there's no longer assistance from Rent Help MN. And, on the flip side, this also helps to make landlords whole as well, who have, sometimes gone many months without collecting their rent. So we're hoping to be able to have some win-win here.
Okay, so what is the wish of the board?
Motion to approve.
Motion's been made to approve by Commissioner Gray.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Commissioner Felber. Any other questions?
Just to clarify, this is a one-time use of funds, correct?
Good question. One-time use of funds?
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
The expenditure is coming out of the ARPA account.
Correct.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion has carried.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we just approved, or you just approved the actual funding source. The actual policy will come back once Mr. Simon and Gina work out the language. So that'll come back at the next meeting, hopefully.
Okay,
Thank you.
probably on the consent agenda?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Moving on to agenda item number 7, that of what you have been about. So with regard to your county committee reports, any upcoming meetings or future agenda items? Commissioner Halls, want to kick this off?
Sure. So it seems like every week is a different main topic. So this last one's been economic development. So last week, in a number of economic development meetings, standing meeting. Then afterwards, had a demonstration of the new software that we approved. It's the customer management resource software, CRM software, which I think will be quite effective. It looks like a good, very good software package and very applicable for the county level. So we had some discussions around that, and then how to make sure we change our processes so that we utilize the software effectively. So that'll be good. Also attended the presentation down at Otsego by Jessica. Excellent presentation on economic development in the area and some of the challenges that the area is seeing demographically. Also had several discussions this week with Senators Lucero and Matthews, specifically around the cannabis bill. One thing I want to point out to the board, the concern is, and Bruce alluded to it, one of the concerns is it has a minimum number of dispensaries that the county is required to have, which I find incredibly stupid. To my knowledge, counties aren't required to have a minimum number of liquor stores, but apparently we are required to have a minimum number of dispensaries. So that's something that is under discussion. And my concern is what's the penalty if we don't meet the minimum? I mean, I think the language is poor. Fortunately, we got a lot of support from Senators Lucero and Matthews on that as well. So they'll do the best they can, but it's in conference committee at this point, and so who knows what will happen with that. I do want to point out, we talked about the other legislative effect was the change in the enhanced medical leave, family leave, medical leave, and the new employment tax. Just want to point out that's not just going to hit the county. It's going to hit every employer and every individual that is employed. So it's something to keep in mind. It's not just a county issue. It's universal. And finally, just on a personal note, I will be traveling out of town, out of state actually, next week, Thursday through Saturday, to attend a funeral. Former squadron mate of mine passed suddenly, so I'll be out in Washington State.
Thank you.
Yes, had a sub-coalition meeting, which is substance use prevention. It was a good meeting. We met in person. We're going to alternate meeting in person, and then the next month will be virtual and alternate from there on. A lot of great discussion, a lot of good information in regards to a physical what do I want to call it? Help me with the word, if it goes out, presentation. Physical presentation that can be brought out anywhere to basically show what it is that you see maybe in the average youth room that could lead to some understanding that you might want to investigate further. It's amazing what they have found that you can utilize to hide substances that you maybe don't want them involved in. You can take a Coke can and you can make it a screw bottom. It looks like a Coke can sitting there, but it's got the ability to hide something. So
I think it's called In Plain Sight.
yes.
Yep, they have a
Hidden in
mock-
plain sight.
Hidden in plain sight. They have a bedroom and both an actual bedroom they'll set up at different places, and then also they have a virtual experience of
It's
it.
an eye-opener to be able to see the things that can be just looking like they're just normal, innocent things, and nope. Even clothing. They've got clothing that they manufacture that has the ability to, the strings are turned into vaping devices. So if you're sitting in a classroom All it does, it looks like you're chewing on your string of your hoodie, and it's actually a vaping device of some sort. It's amazing what they can do. So that was great information. Also attended on the 20th, our Sherburne County EDA meeting, and we did have the presentation for what we just approved in regards to abatement, and some good discussion. We have a good group of people that are at that table, a lot of business leaders, and also baking industry and stuff. So I think we have a good makeup of board. And then also the 21st, attended the United Way Grant Review. That's a good organization that does a lot to help support a lot of the things in the county that work with health and human resources and such in regards to the needs that are out there, whether it's veterans' needs, mental health needs, homelessness in our youth and such. So that was a good event. And then also attended on the 24th, the Options Board meeting. And as we all know, yesterday they opened up their coffee cart here at the Government Center. Looking forward to a long relationship with supporting the Options organization and people with needs that it's hard to find work, but this is a great way to be out in the community and being able to work and provide for themselves. And also then on the 25th, attended the same chamber event that Andrew talked about, where we got to listen to Luke Greiner from the Minnesota information, where demographics is his thing, and he's the state demographer. A lot of good information out of him. And then also our assistant EDA person, Jessica, made a great presentation. It was a lot of great information. And then also on the 26th, attended the Parks System Plan Review. That is getting ready to be finalized. It will come before us, and obviously we'll have a workshop to discuss it. Attended my Big Lake Township board meeting. Would like to take the time to announce that one of the Big Lake supervisors, Norm Leslie, turned in his retirement resignation, I guess you would say, effective immediately. So we'll stay tuned for what the township is going to do in filling that vacancy, and also want to say at the dais to publicly thank Norm Leslie for his 19 years of public service as a township supervisor for Big Lake Township. He did a great job and very, very involved in growing the township park, the Lions Park out there. Everything that's out there was spearheaded and driven by Norm. He'll be greatly missed. Let me see. The 27th, attended the CMRP meeting, Central Mississippi River Partnership. At that time, we did a very large review on what we're going to do. Are we going to move forward and be a 501c6, or are we going to continue to be as we are currently designated? So more to come on that decision. And then also on the 28th, I met with the Big Lake School District Superintendent Tim Truenbach. He had a few things that he wanted to discuss in partnership, what can be done. He's very interested in talking about how with the youth in the school, he's probably here now. I think this is his second year. So he's looking for how can we partner with programs and prevent recidivism of our youth, and whether it's through truancy and stuff. And so I'm going to work on getting him connected with the people that he needs to be talking to in the room. And I think that is it.
Okay, I'll go next. Met with the Big Elk Lake Park Land Development team, along with Commissioner Gray. They are just working hard at doing what they need to do to get that, work within the current grant to get it up and running. And then also working on a lot of different things while just getting that park on its feet now since we just acquired it. Met with the county multidisciplinary team. This is a group that intersects our corrections, our health and human services, our county attorney's office, and they meet to discuss some of our toughest cases. And to sit with them is quite eye-opening, and you realize people are in this work for their heart and their head, and many have done it for years and years and years, but trying to figure out how to help our toughest, some of our toughest constituents in very, very difficult situations. It was amazing. I had a TRICAP finance meeting, our CAP agency, also a TRICAP board meeting, had a federal legislative briefing. As Rand indicated, we had our county park system plan, it was to review the final edits of that plan. Had an executive steering committee, which talked mostly about our diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging committee and our health and wellness committee initiatives. And then also coming down the pike, just to give a heads up, is we are going to be going out for health insurance bids. And as you all know, that is a monetary issue that will affect us greatly. So we'll be going out for bids next year. The executive steering committee is made up of administration, HR, the chair and vice chair, county attorney's office, auditor treasurer's office, sheriff's office. Thank you. So we meet quarterly. Also, and last night had a Princeton Airport meeting. That's it.
Okay, the last couple of weeks I spent a lot of time on water issues, just kind of what was coming up. I had a local water meeting, and then I attended a symposium on harmful algae. And over the course of the couple of weeks, I learned a lot more about how to treat lakes, how to manage the algae, how to manage aquatic invasives, and a lot about the geology of working off of the websites, learning about the geology and how our water flows in here, which does affect obviously other things than just the water itself, but I mean landfills and all the other stuff that I sit on. So that was very helpful. I also went to the CMRP meeting, and that's been covered. I went to the ESC meeting, and that's been covered. I did go to the Becker Families in Need meeting. That particular committee is doing pretty well on getting things happening, and they've managed to use that group as a way to facilitate people who are having immediate crises, as a way to get somebody out there to help them. That's working. We're working on new ways to communicate, and they're going to put out a new website pretty soon so that people will be able to go in there. They have like an Amazon wish list that's going all the time. More ways to get private and basically private contributions to help people out, which is obviously the best way to do this at any time. Just a good way to help out your neighbors. I also went to the Orac Township Board. They're working on getting a new township hall out there. And that's really about all I have this week.
Commissioner Gray.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of being on the Joint Powers Board with Mille Lacs County in regards to a ditch. We sat in on a public hearing on April 18th, Bruce laughs, but it was 7% of this ditch drainage is in Sherburne County, but there were 4 people that spoke from Sherburne County in regards to it, which was all great input. We're having another meeting to follow up on some of the more in-depth that the viewers will have on June 18th. Lisa already touched on the Big Elk Lake Park meeting, which we was at. I sat in with the representatives from the T-Lid and the Briggs Lake Chain Association in regards to some concerns they have on septic systems, in regards to the comp plan and things of that nature. Met with Francine Larson from Soil and Water Conservation District and got into more of the structure of the SWCD, got into the weeds of how the whole process works for them. Very enlightening for me. Had the monthly planning and zoning meeting. Had a Zoom meeting with the NACO Agricultural and Rural Affairs. They had presentations by Land O'Lakes in regards to the ag and how it affects the Farm Bill, and farmers' mental health, which was hugely intriguing to me. Met with staff in regards to some preliminary soil and water testing in regards to large grade utility solar that we're discussing. Again, the regional economic luncheon we had with Luke Reiner and Jessica. I thought Jessica represented the county incredibly well. I don't think you can speak highly of that enough. Greg gave me the pleasure of attending the Oric Township meeting. We sat together. We got reprimanded in the back because we were jipping a little bit. So that's all right.
Watch it.
Yeah, I know. Their clerk put us in.
Representing the county.
The clerk put us into place right away, so we were good. Had the SHAC meeting for public health by Zoom with some breakout sessions by regions, which is, I thought, really good. I'm just learning that whole process, so that was highly entertaining. Then I went to the Blue Hill and San Diego Township Cleanup Days on Saturday, so that was fun to go see and get back into where I started as a Clear Lake Township rep and watch them lug old tires around and mattresses, so that was fun.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
One request I forgot. For a workshop, I think we should put something on the agenda around the civil defense sirens, around the Excel ownership of those.
I think Joel and I are actually going to have it on the board agenda for the next meeting because he requested action, so it'd be more than a workshop.
Okay. I'd like to get some background on that, on what the legal statutory requirements are.
Sure.
So that if we could know what and if there are other technologies that are being utilized.
Got it.
Great. Any others? I really appreciate hearing what people are up to and what we're doing, and the fact that you represent all of us at those meetings. We can't all cover all of this, so for legal reasons, but also just time-wise. So thanks for your coverage of all of that. Any other future agenda items? We're moving into summer. Our schedules kind of stay the same. That's the difference between us and the legislature. When the legislature is done, they're done, and they come back home to do different things if they choose. So they'll be busy in their districts, but our schedules pretty much stay the same. You'll see a little ease up for some of the schedules in July and August, but we keep doing the work of the county. So thanks for letting us know. I find it helpful if people let us know when you're going to be out of town for different things, just so we can be aware of that. It's not mandatory, of course, but with that, we are a little behind schedule, but I know we can make it up. So let's recess our regular meeting and take a hearty 10-minute break, come back at 10 past 11. And where are we meeting?
Because we have so many, I'm going to set up tables right here.
Okay.
We'd like to stay here for these large workshops.
Okay, so we will just be meeting back at the dais, but it will be workshop fashion, less formal, and we don't record these. Opportunity for us to get a little deeper dive into the issues. So with that, we are on break.